morning, and welcome to CSL Denver, a place, a space, and a face of love, a spiritual community teaching ancient wisdom and applying universal principles to embody the intelligence of the divine and to empower our lives. So this morning, as you heard from Bill, our theme today is enriching enriching the wholeness of life. If we was to put it in a capsule, enriching the wholeness of life. And so today, I think it's a special day when we think about the wholeness of life, right? Because we have New Year's coming up and the solstice is coming up, and we already got all these different expressions of light. And one thing about light is whole. It can't be, you can't divide it. You can do a lot of things with it, but divided is not one of them. And so when we can use that idea of wholeness and looking at light, it allows us to think of the expansiveness of it. It allows us to think of the wholeness of it. And so when we look at the definition of wholeness, we got many different dictionaries. We got the Oxford and the Webster and, Merriam. I can't even keep up with all of them, but they all narrow down the word of wholeness into one concise point, I think. And that is something that is unbroken, something that is complete, something that you can't put into parts. Now, when you think about what we just said there in terms of something that can't be separated or put into parts, when we look around us in the world we live in, unfortunately, we have defined it as such, these different parts. We've allowed ourselves to get stuck in various facsimiles of a whole, whether it's a medical system or a political system or a social system or ideological system, that we find ourselves often, not all the time, but often getting trapped. We get stuck in these little aspects of what we think life is in this wholeness, and we wind up being lost or lonely or mad or afraid or scared, all these different things, because we're not operating from a place of wholeness. We're not operating from a place of wholeness. Now, we just said that New Year's is coming. And I know a lot of people, especially now, people don't like the New Year's resolutions. They're, oh my goodness, I don't want to make no resolutions. Right? But if you just think about that for a minute, right? Oftentimes when we make these resolutions, we're looking for the one quick fix. We want that one thing. I'm gonna change my diet. I'm gonna meditate. I'm gonna read more. I'm gonna journal more. I'm gonna not get mad at my partner as much, right? As much. Yeah. I'm glad y'all caught that, because I know she's saying the same thing about me. I'm not gonna get mad with him as much. But when we look at the wholeness of it, we're looking at a one-stop, quick fix, and that never works. It never works. Because wholeness means complete, integrated, unified, one thing, working towards a common goal, right? And so when we look at wholeness, we have to begin to think that the way to be in harmony with all things, the way to be operating at optimal performance, we have to take everything in consideration. Now, recently in Las Vegas, they had the Formula One auto racing. People were mad because it took up everything. It is loud noises running all around, streets all blocked up. But I'm here to tell you, if you've never been to a Formula One race, and I've been to one, I actually was a part of one Wasn't in the pit crew because I'd have messed up somebody's car, but I was helping pass tickets out and as part of my company. And there's one thing that you learn about wholeness when you deal with a Formula One car race or a Formula One car, is that it is a whole team that makes that thing happen. They play with the gas. You know, there's certain mixtures of gas you can have, and you can't be over. So there's a science to the gas. And then you got the pit crew, and then you got the mechanic crew, not those mechanics that are on the course when you're racing, but the mechanics back in the shop, the engineers who are figuring out how to make that thing go together. And when that driver steps in the car, that car and the driver and the pit crew and the fuel, it becomes one whole complete thing. One thing. And so they race as Mitsubishi, or they race as Ferrari. One word to claim all these different things. Because they understand for real what it means to be whole. Because they know if the tire man mess up, not only are they not going to win, somebody might lose their life. And that's where we are today. We have to begin to look at ourselves in wholeness. And it's through this wholeness of that team, right, that they enrich the whole racing experience. Now, we've heard life described in many different ways, as a play, as a race, as a game. Pick one, doesn't matter. Because when you look at them in their entirety, they represent wholeness. You don't go to a movie and just look at one character or follow just that one character's line unless you're studying to be that part. I mean, other than that, that's going to be a waste of time, right? So wholeness is key. Wholeness is key. And when we begin to really look at this idea of wholeness, it's broken up into two words, whole and ness, right? Some of the things we learned in, I guess we learned them in elementary school, probably middle school, these things called suffixes. Ness is a suffix. It's added to a word to modify the word, right? To give it, to make it a either, I mean, and it's a funny thing. You can make it an adverb, or you can make it a noun, or you can make it an adjective when you add these suffixes to words. Now, whole, the word whole by itself means complete, not scattered, not divided. But now it really becomes alive when you add this suffix ness, because ness speaks to a condition, a state of being, a way of maneuvering in the world. And so when we look at wholeness, we look at a way of living that is multidimensional and active. Thus, wholeness really is an active, multidimensional process of life. Wholeness, multi-dimensional process of life. Now, some people are looking saying, what the heck is he talking about? I would invite each one of you to just close your eyes for a minute and just pay attention to your breath. Pay attention to your heartbeat. Pay attention to the sounds that you hear within the room. There's a wholeness going on within our bodies. There's an interrelated, connected, unified presence of one whole being that is at place. And so when we begin to take these moments to close our eyes and realize the wholeness of who we are, understand that we are made in the image and likeness of love, i.e. the divine principle and creative force in the universe, there's no way not to be whole unless you forget that you're whole. Unless you begin to operate from a standpoint of scatteredness, of unwholeness, right? And so we live in a scientific world. And as you know, The definition of science is what? Cut, divide, separate. So I can understand each little intricate nuance of a thing. So I think. Because if I take the chain off my bike, I know we got a lot of bikers in Colorado. If I take the chain off my bike and examine the chain and all the links and the length of it and the connecting points and understand everything there is to know about a chain. But then I go back to the bike. I no longer have a bike because a bike requires a chain. And without the chain, the bike is it's just there. I mean, it has some cute little nuances, but it ain't a bike. It ain't going to take you to the store. It's not going to take you on a nice mountain ride. It is the wholeness of the chain and the bike and all of the other stuff that we even talk about, the wheels, that creates wholeness. So what part of your life, what part of my life have I allowed to be so separated that I'm no longer enriched with the ability to do a mountain bike ride or to participate in the Formula One race? How have I allowed myself to be discombobulated, as they say, just all messed up to where I have no idea, I can't remember who I am? I'm gonna raise my hand. I as they say in the South, tell the truth and shame the devil. Because as we said, this is a process. It's not a steady state. It changes. And it includes everything, all things, the good things, the bad things, the in-between things. It is a process. There's a process when that guy's driving the Formula One car, when the gauge says you need gas. There's a process. He gets on the headset and say, hey, gas is low. Next lap, pull into the pit stop, right? Our pit stops are those moments of prayer, moments of meditation, moments of hiking, moments of all these things where we get a chance to be centered again, to recognize all these different parts of ourselves and look at them and think of them and imagine them in a oneness, in a wholeness, in a completeness that oscillates, right? That works in this way in one environment and that way in another environment. And because it's acting in two different ways, that does not mean it's something different or it's not whole or it's not complete. The completeness of it is demonstrated in those positions because it can adjust that process again. I'm guaranteeing there's nobody in this room or online or who hears this later, if they are riding a bike or running or driving that Formula One car, that they don't want their heart to beat just a little bit faster than it does when it normally beats. Because that's what gets the oxygen moving around in your body. And you want to be on point with lots of oxygen so you don't pass out when you're driving the Formula One. Because the speeds of those things are incredible. And just think, the world is moving through space at a speed that's faster than that. So the question, you got your seatbelt on, you got your gas tank full, you got your tires inflated at the right PSI. Because if you don't, wholeness will be very difficult to achieve. So are you ready to step into wholeness is the real question. Have you been operating from these splintered parts of life? Have you been allowing yourself or others to move you away from your center? And you are now ready to operate in wholeness, in completeness, in oneness. Oh. And by the way, that don't mean just you. That means everybody that's around you, because they're part of the one wholeness of the universe. So now let's not get self-centered or stuck on my little, what I think is the cat's meow, because it's not. I play a part. I have a role to play to create the grand wholeness, but it's only through that interrelationship between everything and everybody that I even get a chance to shine my oneness and therefore enrich my life and the lives of others. And because it's a two-way street, it happens both ways. When you step into wholeness, when you live in wholeness, I become whole. And when I do it, you become whole. It's like, kind of like we've heard of that thing called osmosis, right? When I do my thing osmosisly, you begin to do your thing. Wholeness, enrichment, living life as one. As one. Because without that, we just have a pile of parts. And if we look around the world today at all of the stuff, I'm going to just leave it at stuff. That's what we're operating with. Discombobulated pile of things that are not cooperating together. We're trying, but we're trying from a self-centered perspective, I would suggest. From a perspective where we are trying to have, as they say, big eyes and little me's or little we's, or I don't know how the thing goes, but I know one thing. I know it ain't working, whatever we call it. Because it's just take the wholeness of the food process. I mean, we got enough food in this country, on this globe, that nobody should be hungry. Nobody should be in food insecurity. There should be no food deserts. Go figure. A food desert. I don't even know what that is. But when we don't live in wholeness, we find food deserts. But when we live in wholeness, and we see all of the food that gets thrown out, or we see all the food, we're shaming the devil now, so just hold on to your seat, that we buy and put in our refrigerator and never eat and throw out. Okay, no, don't none of y'all do that. It's just me. I know it. I know it's just me. I got to get better because it's just me that does that. But when we live in wholeness, we understand I need one tomato, but the sales rack says you can get 3 for $1. And you say, ooh, that's a deal. I can get 3. Well, if I buy one, it's 50 cents. So I'm going to say 20-something cents and get 3. Don't eat the full one and throw the other 2 away. Not wholeness. So as we begin to look at and try to understand what that means for us, we have to first understand that we are physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual beings. And I took the shortcut and just named 4 because each one of those could be broken down into subparts. But when we look at a broader category, it's just physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And from those points of view, everything is connected. Everything percolates up to this oneness. Call you, call me, call we. And so the first thing that we have to do is visualize what wholeness looks like. And to get a good example about that, there was an astronaut on Apollo 9. His name was Rusty. His name escapes me. Schweikart. Rusty Schweikart. He was the mission specialist on Apollo 9. And other astronauts have expressed this same thing, but I think he does a very good job of it. Because he says, when he's up into space, and this was in the 60s, right? 69, I think it was. And, now going to space and doing spacewalks is a common thing. Back then, it was like driving one of them Formula One cars. I don't know if I'm coming back after this, right? And so he gets up there and he's doing this thing, and he looks down and he can visibly see certain areas because of the light, undivisible. He can Texas and California, and he can figure out Africa, North Africa. And then he sits there for a moment and he realizes that all these boundaries that I think I'm seeing, from here, there are no boundaries. It's just one thing. There's no, this imaginary line of boundaries that we are so stuck on, that we kill people for, that we divine ourselves by, really don't exist. It's a wholeness that he saw. It's a wholeness that every astronaut that goes in space saw. And it affects them immensely, every one of them. Now imagine if we could begin to see, without going into space, that same wholeness. And how the benefit of seeing that wholeness enriches our lives, enriches this planet, enriches everything that we see, do, and touch. Because when we can do that, all of these problems, or so-called problems that we have, will be solved almost immediately. Almost immediately. And so when we get ready to do this, what do we take away as three key steps, or three key stepping stones to live in wholeness, to be enriched by wholeness, and to know that without that, everything is subpar, less than, not complete. So the first thing is, Paul, if we could get that first slide, not the call to action, the very first one, with the meditation there. Yes, this one. So when we begin to start down this process, let's take this into consideration. Spare me perfection. Give me instead the wholeness that comes from embracing the full reality of who I am, just as I am. That's the starting point right there. You have to accept yourself for yourself, as yourself. Nobody can define you. Nobody can tell you who you are, because they only see the external part. That's not the complete part, because you got an internal part too. And so your wholeness can't even be expressed until you recognize that at the very least. And when you do that, now you're ready for the next step. You're ready for the next step. And the next step is recognize the divine intelligence in everything. What do you mean everything? I mean everything. The good, the bad, the stupid questions, the time I stomped my toe and called myself stupid, whatever. Everything is divine, because if we believe in a divine intelligence that created all things, right now, forget the different names that we try to call something that we can't see. We don't call it God and this and Buddha and a bunch of names to help us feel comfortable. But if you was to call it that, it would be looking around for that same thing you're looking for. It's like, I don't recognize that name. It definitely ain't me. It's intelligence. It's consciousness. It's awareness. So the first thing that we have to do is recognize this intelligence. And if I get that next slide, Paul, there is only consciousness in all directions, absolute and all pervading, radiant through and as all conditions, the source and suchness of everything that arises moment to moment, utterly prior to this world, but not other than this world. All things are just a ripple in this pond. All arising is a gesture of this one thing. Ken Wilber, no boundaries. Because that's what happens when you live from wholeness. There are no boundaries, because I know everything is connected. If there's something that's not allowing this thing to appear in wholeness, I just have to figure out where the connection is. There's no boundaries. There's no separation. There's oneness. There's unity. There's connection. And it's displayed in a diverse way that you just have to love it. Who would ever think that a little bee could land on a flower and make something as sweet as honey? Who would think that? Especially after it stung you 1 or 2 times. You're like, ooh, I know what I'm going to do with this bee. I'm going to kill it. Because it stung me twice. My hands all swelled up. Wholeness. wholeness. So when we can recognize that there's an intelligence, there's a purpose, there's a connecting thing in everything, we can relax. We can take a deep breath. We don't have to figure it all out right now. But we do have to recognize the intelligence. We do have to move into this idea of awareness and curiosity and understand paradoxes, things that we've been talking about this whole year in terms of things, curiosity and paradox. They don't always, the paradox of the bee stinging you and making honey is a serious paradox. So the next thing, after we understand and recognize the divine intelligence, we have to begin to kindle that intelligence within ourselves. Now, you know what kindle means, right? That means, if you ever been camping or you got a fireplace that's a wood burning fireplace, you have to kindle that fire. You just can't go up there and think it's going to go woof. You got to get some, kindling or something. You got to let it burn, and then you start putting the bigger logs on. You have to do that with your own life. You have to kindle the spirit of oneness, of wholeness, of divine intelligence within yourself. Now, what does that mean? That means you got to read good stuff. You can't just read Harlequin love stories all day. Nothing wrong with Harlequin love stories, because I like a good Harlequin love story myself. But I can't read that all day, every day. You have to kindle that spirit within you. You got to have meaningful relationships. And that don't mean everybody that agree with me. I need some relationships where somebody going to challenge me and say, man, that sounds pretty stupid to me. You better not do that. That's how you kindle that curiosity, that intelligence. Because if everything is agreeing with me, what have I done? I've separated myself. I've created a part away from the whole, and it will inevitably lead me down a path that I don't want to go. So if we get that next slide, this is the vision of our organization, Centers for Spiritual Living. It says, we envision all people, all beings, and all life as expressions of God. We see a world in which every person lives in alignment with his or her highest spiritual principle, embracing unity with God and connection with each other. A world in which individually and collectively, we are called to a higher state of consciousness and action. We envision a world that works for everyone. And I'll change that last one and say a world that works for all, because that includes the planet, which is not a person. That includes the birds, which are not people, or the cows, or the whatever, right? That means everything. That means everything. And we want a world that works for everything, where there's this symbiotic relationship, which it is. This symbiotic relationship, meaning this relationship where one thing depends on the other. We're talking now about cutting trees and carbon dioxide and the planet warming and all of that. My thing is, forget that. The trees make oxygen for me to live. I might be able to deal with a little heat. I can't deal without oxygen at all. Maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. There's a relationship in this universe that creates a wholeness that if we overlook it, we will be doomed. So let's begin to think a little more creatively. Let's think a little more unified. Let's begin to think a little more collectively. And so this last point, once we've recognized divine intelligence and we've kindled that fire, that spirit, that consciousness within, then we have to understand the process. You have to understand the process of wholeness, this multi-dimensional active process that we sometimes call life. That we sometimes call it life. Now, it got many other names, but I think the grand name is life. Because if your life, just think about it. Have there ever been a point where you thought your life wasn't together? Oh, again, it's me. Okay, it's just me. All right, that's all right. I know when I thought my life wasn't together, it was a mess. Not because it was a mess, but it was a mess. Trying to figure out what to do next, where to go, who to talk, what it has to be looked at in a intention of wholeness as a process. When we look at this last slide here, wholeness is our capacity to experience health or life as transcending all limits while accepting them. Overcoming this virus of perfectionism, which keeps us locked into an imaginary world rather than the real world. It is paradoxical in accepting limits that we can transcend them. It's paradoxical that we have to accept these moments of just complete madness in our life so that we can overcome them, so that we can move continually in this process of becoming whole. And by doing that, everything's enriched. My life, your life, all life, which is what we need more and more of today. And so, as always, we have call to actions. This is a place where you can't just come and listen, and you got to do some work. Unfortunately, for some of us, myself included at times. Like this morning when I tried to get up, I was, oh, I'm going to lay up for another 5 minutes, went to another hour, right? But eventually I had to get up and do the work. It didn't serve me, right? So when we look at these call to actions, here are 3 points. You can take them all or one. I won't say you can't take none. You got to take at least one to move into this idea of becoming whole. The first one is take time for self-reflection to understand your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and journal about what you find. You ain't got to tell me. Can if you want. We can talk about it. We can discuss it. We can figure out what's going on. But begin to have that self-reflective moment and then journal. If you don't like journaling, now we got these things called cell phones. I got one somewhere. You can turn that thing on and talk to it. Do you believe that? And it will record it and turn it into words. Wholeness. Look at that. My voice is turned into words that I can read. When we begin to express life that way, that's what happens. Miracles. The second thing is develop an approach to prioritize your whole being. And that PMES means physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Got to do them all. It's like driving a car with a flat tire on just one tire. Boy, you can still get someplace, but it's going to be a rough ride. You got to get some air in all them tires. Now, you can deal with a little off pressure, but if one goes totally flat, you're in trouble. And the third thing is, and I think this one is key, study the body to really understand wholeness. Now, you don't have to take an anatomy class. Online now, you can go online and put in academy and you can get a real good understanding of your body. The skeletal system, the circulatory system, the limbic system, the all systems, right? And I mean, there's a ton of them, and they'll show you how they work together. But the one thing that it emphasizes is that they work together to create one whole body called you. And when you begin to do that, when you can understand that, life becomes a little bit easier. I guarantee you. It becomes a little more easier to navigate. And so with that, I want to just leave with this closing. Living in wholeness is a continual journey, a daily practice of mindfulness, self-discovery, and intentional living. It is an ongoing process of aligning our inner selves with our outer selves. Our inner selves with our outer selves, creating a harmonious symphony of existence. May we walk this path together, supporting and encouraging one another on our shared journey toward living a true life of wholeness. Let us pray. Heavenly Mother, Father God, that inside and outside presence of the divine intelligence that permeates all things. We take this moment to recognize that oneness, that unity, that wholeness called the source of all there is, and allow ourselves to remember that that spark that we kindle, that we keep lit, is in each and everything in this universe. And that as we begin to understand that and kindle that and know that, we begin to see ourselves in each other. We begin to recognize the me in the you and the you in the me. And we understand that we're in this together. As the story goes, it says, we may have come over here on different ships, but we are all in the same boat now. And as we begin to really understand that and cultivate what it means to be in one boat, with one heart, with one sound, with one direction that we're moving, we begin to enrich everything we see. And so I know right here, right now, as I speak this word for myself and you and anyone else that hears this later, I declare right here, right now, that we are whole, that we are complete, that we are enough, that we are moving in a way that allows us to be more than we ever thought we could be. And so we rest on that idea and we relax and we release these words into a law, giving thanks for all there is, and know that we are so. And so it is. Amen.
Oh, yeah. Grateful. I just say I am so grateful every day for all I have. Every day. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for all I have. Every day I say it. Grateful. How I